Let's dive into the story of one man, one blinding flash in a desert, and a moment that changed our world forever. This is about J. Robert Oppenheimer and the chaotic, brilliant birth of the atomic age.
Yeah, those are the words of the man himself. He said that right after seeing the first atomic bomb go off. That one sentence, it just tells you everything you need to know about the weight of what they had done. It really sets the stage for everything that followed.
So, who exactly was this man at the center of it all? To get how he pulled this off, how he led the entire world into a new age, you've got to understand the kind of mind he had. We need to look at the man before the bomb.
J. Robert Oppenheimer wasn't just your typical genius locked away in a lab. I mean, sure, he was a brilliant theoretical physicist, but he was also something else. He had this incredible, almost magnetic ability to inspire people, to organize them. And that unique mix of skills, that's what made him the perfect guy for a job that everyone thought was impossible. This quote from a historian just nails it. It wasn't just that he knew the physics, It was that he knew how to manage these huge egos, how to get hundreds of the world's smartest people, all with their own ideas, to focus on one single, secret goal. That was his real superpower. And that superpower of his was about to be put to the test. This is where the story shifts into high gear. We're in the middle of a world war, a frantic race against the enemy, and the birth of one of the most secret and ambitious projects in human history.
The Manhattan Project. I mean, the scale of this thing was just immense. The US was terrified that Nazi Germany was going to build an atomic bomb first. So the response was to throw literally everything they had, all the scientific brainpower, the industrial might, at one single goal: build it first. And Oppenheimer, he was picked to run the secret lab that would actually design the thing.
Okay, so what did they actually have to do? Well, it really boiled down to three massive challenges. First, you got to make the fuel, the fissile material. Second, you have to figure out how to design a gadget that can actually unleash all that energy. And third, and this is the big one, you have to test it to see if all your theories aren't just a bunch of math on a chalkboard. And to solve these problems, they basically built a city from scratch in the middle of nowhere on this remote plateau in New Mexico. It was Oppenheimer's job to recruit the best of the best, and he did. He brought in giants like Enrico Fermi, Hans Bethe, a young Richard Feynman. He created this incredible pressure cooker where brilliant scientists were fueled by the absolute urgency of the war. So all this theory, all this work, all these people gathered in this secret city, it all led to one single moment of truth. And you have to remember, the science they were doing was on the absolute bleeding edge. Nobody was sure if this was actually going to work. The team was actually chasing two different designs at the same time. The first was called a gun-type bomb. The idea was pretty simple. You just slam one piece of uranium into another. The problem? Getting enough of that specific kind of uranium was incredibly hard. The other option was the implosion type. It used plutonium, which was easier to get, but building it, well, that was an absolute engineering nightmare. Why was it a nightmare? It all came down to timing. You needed a perfectly round shell of normal explosives to all go off at the exact same microsecond. The goal was to crush a plutonium sphere in the middle with perfect symmetry. If you were off by even a fraction of a second, the whole thing would just fizzle out. It was a problem of insane precision.
This slide kind of breaks it down. Picture this. You're trying to squeeze a grapefruit down to the size of a marble by pushing on it from all sides at the exact same time. That's basically what they had to do, but with high explosives and a core of plutonium. It was a crazy, almost unbelievable plan, and that's the one they decided to test.
And on July 16, 1945, out in the New Mexico desert, they got their answer. The test, codenamed Trinity, went off with a force of 20,000 tons of TNT. A light brighter than anything anyone had ever seen filled the sky. Right then, right there, humanity had harnessed a new and terrifying power.
As Oppenheimer watched that mushroom cloud climb into the sky, he said that this line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, came into his mind. It's just a haunting, chilling recognition of what they had just brought into the world.
The scientific achievement was undeniable. It was a total success. But that moment of triumph was followed almost immediately by a moral reckoning that would haunt Oppenheimer for the rest of his life and reshape the entire planet.
And you have to see how fast it all happened. It's just staggering. Less than a month after that first test, 2 atomic bombs were used on cities in Japan, bringing World War II to a sudden, violent end. The world changed in the span of a few weeks. But ending the war came at a horrific, almost unimaginable price. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki resulted in immense death and suffering. And they kicked off a brand new age, the nuclear age, an era built on a new kind of global fear. This was the reality of what they had created. This really gets to the heart of the conflict inside Oppenheimer and a lot of the other scientists. They were incredibly proud that they solved this monumental scientific puzzle, but that pride was forever tangled up with the awful human cost of their invention. And after the war, Oppenheimer's life just completely flipped. The guy who was celebrated as a national hero for ending the war started speaking out, pushing for international control of this new power. He argued against building the next, even bigger weapon, the H-bomb. And that position put him on a collision course with powerful people in Washington. In the paranoid fear of the Cold War, the hero became a security risk. And in 1954, they took away his security clearance, basically kicking him out of the very world he had helped to create.
So after all of it, the triumph, the tragedy, the rise, and the fall, what do we do with a figure like this? What is the legacy of J. Robert Oppenheimer?
At the end of the day, his story isn't just about a weapon. It's really about something bigger. It's about what happens when human genius and ambition run headfirst into moral responsibility. It forces us to ask, what do we do with the knowledge we create?
And really, Oppenheimer himself put it best. He laid out the core problem right there. You can't separate the act of discovering something from the consequences of that discovery. That was the challenge he lived with, and it's a challenge that science is still grappling with today.
And that's really the question his life leaves us with, isn't it? It's a huge question about power, about responsibility, about what progress even means. And in our own time, with technology moving faster than ever, that question feels more urgent than it ever has.